Hello and welcome to a brand new Madaxeman podcast. Yes, we've restarted the original content machine, we've delved deep into the barrel, and we've got a tentative step towards full podcast return as we start with a three-hander list review podcast in which myself, Dave and Richard look at some of the lists which did well at the recent BHGS Team Tournament. So sit back, unplug your ears and listen to us witter on about other people's lists.
This means war.
Well, it's been a long hiatus, and possibly slightly disappointingly, we're coming back with a list pod, which is no reflection on my two venerable and honourable guests, Mr. Saunders and Mr. Case, but the full zoo format is no doubt in the pipeline, and we'll be hitting the screen soon. But this was kind of an easy one to ease us back into it, and particularly timely given that there's been a pretty big competition, 35 people, nearly 36, taking part of the LGT in northeast London, or in a sports centre in northeast London. And of that team competition, there were teams of 3 players all playing up to the Guerre, and what we've managed to do is somehow get hold of the lists of the top 2 teams to finish in first and second place, to share with you on this list pod. And given neither Dave, Richard nor myself were in those top 2 teams, it's going to be a little bit of a surprise to all of us. So at least we can evaluate them in some sort of way. And well, without further ado, let's just wade straight in and look at the competition. The 3 teams, the 3 periods which each team had a player in. There was a biblical period, there was a steppe armies period, which we'll talk about later, and there was a much more open pre-0 BC 25 mil period as well. But what we're going to do, we're going to start with the 2 biblical armies that came in second place and then in first place, and have a chat about their structure and see what we think about them, and then work through the steppe, and then work into the big boys' toys, and then we'll be done, and then we'll be back into possibly a more regular routine of these things. But let's start and look at the very first biblical list that we've got here, which is list number 20, the Hittites, the Hittite Empire in 1380, and this one was fielded by the Spanish dice demon Iñaki, an international visitor coming over to the UK to play gaming, which is pretty cool, and sits there with a 10, a 7, and a 9. So it's a pretty big army. It's 26, and it's not. It's done that by getting in some of these new cheaper medium swordsmen, I can see. But let's just look at what those 3 lists are. There's a strategist, kind of important, and the first command with the strategist has 4 impetuous medium swordsmen, 4 normal medium swordsmen, and 2 light infantry with javelin. So pretty much foot. The next one, which is a 7, has an ordinary included general, bit of a theme, and that's got 1 elite heavy chariot impact with the general, obviously, 2 Hittite chariots, and again heavy chariot impact, and then 2 Syro-Canaanite chariots, one of which has got bow, and one of which has got the new biblical hotness of armor with bow, and then a couple of light infantry sling as well. And then your final command, again ordinary included, 3 heavy chariot impact elite, giving you 4 in total, 2 more heavy chariot impacts, that's 5 in that command, and 4 light infantry bowmen, which I suspect is a screen for those chariots. So pretty punchy, but each command is pretty one-dimensional. So Richard, let's start with you. What is this a list that you've looked at before? What's your thoughts on reading down that roster of
in fact, I had a practice game against this list in a slightly earlier version of it, and I think it's a very strong list with but it does have some vulnerabilities. So the width of the army, having 10 chariots and 8 medium swordsmen, gives you, a very strong width, particularly
that's a biblical host, isn't it? It's a biblical.
It is, particularly if you get a waterway down. There's plenty of light infantry, so if the opponent tries to be clever and puts mountains down or desert, you've got lots of light infantry to operate in the difficult going. The strategist means that you can kind of pin people with the impetuous and then sneak the ordinary medium swordsman round somebody's flank, because often with 8 you may be opposed to somebody with only 6. I think, though, the weakness is having both of the chariot generals included is if they get stuck in combat, then the flanks of one of those commands might be vulnerable, particularly if you haven't got the waterway down. So, in the hands of a good player, as Iñaki is, I think it can be a lot of trouble. And if you've got a smaller army, I think you're going to find it really hard to handle, and hence I suspect it's success over the weekend.
Okay, Dave, what's your thoughts on this one?
I spoke to Iñaki at the end of the competition, and he was actually, if he got what's the initiative? I can't quite see
3.
it at the moment.
It's 3. So it's got the strategist, which gives you 2, and then 8 light infantry.
I think its initiative is probably higher than other people's in this competition. I think what Iñaki was doing was going for mountain. Then he had got that hard edge to just run his chariots down. So, he was trying to squeeze he's got a lot of quite hefty troops there, hasn't he? If he can get the frontage down, so it's his 8 heavy chariots running into somebody, that's his mission in there. I agree with Richard. I think there's a danger of one flank being left open. He's got one flank where he can cover with the 2 light chariots, but that's a little bit risky. He's obviously hoping that one flank will be medium foot friendly to hold that down, while his chariots just run straight down the middle of the table. In your immortal words, is a bowling alley. That was his tactic, and he was going for mountains, he was going for a coast and just running straight down the middle, and it worked for him. And I have to say, Iñaki was saying that his magic hands were back and his dice rolling was very good.
Yeah, but I guess if you've got that many heavy chariot impact, you've got a lot of opportunities to roll quite memorably good dice, haven't you, really? And he's got a strategist to control his medium sword impetuous. No, I must admit, I thought the having 8 medium swords, 4 normal, 4 impetuous, that may be kind of a bit of a thing, because if people are taking more of these medium sword, or in a biblical period when there's a lot of these kind of mixed bowmen and types like that, that's actually 8 of the people to throw at something is an awful lot, isn't it? It does make you think, how many other armies could get 8 medium swordsmen and just utterly overwhelm anything that's trying to delay in rough terrain on the flank. But this army is going to be taking all their attention in the center as well. So did he say he was actually winning through just pounding people with the chariots, or how did it work?
He was pounding people with the chariots. I mean, I watched one game he played against Julian, who's probably the biggest threat to him, but his heavy chariots had run over the camels, and it was incredibly scattered, the game I was watching. I couldn't believe how it was hard to tell whose army was who, to be quite honest. It was all medium foot running around fighting individual fights. Okay.
When I played a practice game against it, it had very little light infantry, and I had a lot of bow cavalry, and I was able to shoot up the chariots before they got in. And I think as a result of that practice game, hence the much greater quantities of screening light foot. And I think it does make it very hard to take down, because in period there's very little other than heavy spearmen that will stand up to, or other heavy chariots that'll stand up to it.
Yeah, but so it's basically in period, it's probably got more heavy impact chariots than most other people. And,
yes.
And unless I guess a Mycenaean army or one of those lucks out and survives that first round, but then I guess you throw 8 medium swordsmen at them and have a go, don't you?
Yeah.
He beat up Pete nicely, and he just took the luck and charged the chariots into the spear, where he's one down, but he's armoured and often elite, and all he needs is to break through at one point. And as you say, I think the medium swordsmen did their job. The impetuous guys went flying in, and that, you know, I mean, you can put 2 medium swordsmen on either side of the impetuous medium swordsman and give the impetuous medium swordsman their biggest chance of breaking through. And I think that's what happens against Peter's spear, who, you know, the spear army becomes a little bit stationary and just stands there waiting to be hit.
Yeah. I mean, you can create a very similar army from the Hebrew list. But I don't think it has the impetuous foot, and that just adds a nice extra wrinkle to this version.
Okay, well, look, that's interesting. It's a good list. It's not subtle, but it does what it says on the tin.
This means war.
Let's have a look at the list that did better actually than it in the overall competition as well. And this is Paul Dawson's textbook classic, or well, the Army's textbook classic. But this is a list that's had a bit of a refresh in version 4. The list number 9, Assyrian Empire and Sargonid, or Sargonid, or however you like to call it. This one's much smaller. It's a 22. And the way it's put itself together is it's got 2 big commands. It's got an 8 and a 9, and then it's got the heavy chariot delivery command, which is a 5, and that one is 3 elite heavy chariot impact, included general, and 2 light infantry with sling, and then the other ones are just a bit more of a mix. So let's try and see if I can get those ones up on screen. So after that small one, you've then got the first one, which is an 8, as I said, brilliant commander, 1 elite heavy chariot impact, 2 light infantry bow. These are all different. It takes forever to read this one out. A guardsman who is medium swordsman armor support elite. And I think you'll see a bit more support coming out in all of these lists. The Cimmerian, Scythian type light cavalry bow, one of those, I guess, that operates with the chariot probably, a javelinman to lurk about, a heavy infantry missile support, only one of them, and a line infantry, which is half sword, half bow. So that's a command of bits, really. A chariot and a light horse, 2 medium swordsmen, one of which is mixed, one of which got armor support elite, a javelinman as well, and 1 heavy swordsman missile support. And then the other brilliant command, 3 of the medium swordsman bowmen, the 3 mixed types, which in my hands have always felt a bit vulnerable. 2 elite heavy cavalry bow, 1 normal heavy cavalry bow. The heavy cavalry have had a bit of a hamstringing, I think, in these new lists. Another light horse bow to support them, a light infantry javelinman, and the other guardsman, medium swordsman armor support elite, which is a lot of points at 11, and a lot of points when you've got 2 of them. And those are the other 2 big commands, as well as your chariot delivery system. So I guess maybe the question with this one, and again, Richard, starting with you, this to me looks a bit different to how you would have done a Sargonid list in version 3. But is that just maybe me having one way of doing that list?
I think it's a bit different. I played against Paul with this list. It is extremely effective. I mean, obviously it depends on the terrain and the opponent, but what you can do is put the small command in the middle, so that you've got that big punch in the middle, and then you've got two flanks. I think the mixed bow sword is very effective when used with heavy cavalry bow, because they mutually support each other. Having at least 1 good combat medium swordsman just toughens up the mixed units and gives them a better chance to stand up against infantry. looking then at the other command, you've got some very, as you said, a real jumble of different foot types to extend the heavy chariot line. And you've then got a heavy chariot and a light horse bow and a javelin man who can stop a big mob of, if you're facing a massed enemy with lots of medium foot, those three can hold up a big mob of 6 medium swordsmen sneaking round your flank because they won't want to face the heavy chariot. I think the thing that is different particularly is having the heavy swordsman with missile support. Now that takes away mounted furious charge, that's a really good unit for fairly cheaply standing up to heavy chariots or being able to deliver, a solid place holding the line where together with the guardsmen, and then the mixed unit there just gives you the ability to hold off enemy cavalry by being able to shoot them effectively. So I think it's very effective. I think its potential weakness is its small size. Somebody determined can get round it, but it's very hard to handle frontally.
Yeah, I guess all the individual bits are quite scary, but there isn't that many of them, is there? It's just maybe it's taking your taking your heart in your hands and just actually having a go at it might swamp it. That may be the way around. Dave, what's your quizzical thoughts on this?
It's a very, very different way of playing to what I'm used to playing with. I've never seen an army quite so. It's what I've always referred to as a French way of playing with very mixed up commands, where and it's something I've never really played with yet. I think I'm going to have to learn to play this way. I would say it's something like I would call it a sort of DBM's way to play with it, where you've got a revolving set of tools, if necessary, to come at people with, you're going to win the initiative again. You're going to get to look at your opponent's army. You're going to know which of your troops in the two mixed up commands you want to approach the enemy with. I find it quite fascinating. I mean, obviously, I think the 3 heavy chariots in group 3 goes down the middle. I think, therefore, what happens is because you've got the 2 brilliant generals, you've got a lot of pips there, which are going to go. You can either go and support that core 3 and turn it into 4 heavy chariots if necessary, or as Richard says, you can split it up and go to somewhere else. If someone counters you 3 heavy chariots, you can deploy somewhere else and come at it from a different angle. I agree with Richard. I mean, one of the things I've really discovered is bowmen supporting heavy cavalry bow and those sort of things. That's very powerful. The foot bowman having the +1 against mounted means you will usually see off another heavy cavalry bow command, and we'll come on to that again and with the 2 steppe armies we're going to look at. I think that happens a bit. I find command 1 fascinating. 8 groups, and the only thing which has got 2 of the same in it is light infantry bow. Yes. I just think that's just bizarre and very different. I mean, I'm going to have to learn to play like that.
Yeah, 1 heavy swordsman does look a bit unusual, a bit left behind, but
yes, you can use that. That can support the chariots.
Yeah, with pretty tough swordsman.
All
right, so I guess again, the final question though really is, if you were dropping this one on table against Iñaki's, which one would you prefer, and which one would you rate?
I'd go for Iñaki's because that's the way I'm used to playing.
I think it depends on the terrain. If Iñaki's got plenty of open space that he can have his 2 chariot commands supporting each other, then life is hard for the Assyrians. But if there's lots of pockets of rough going where those mixed units can start shooting up the chariots, then I think, and the chariots can't really get at them, and the heavy cavalry bow can start popping away, then I think that the Hittites have a harder time.
Yeah,
I think it comes down to the initiative, and I think the initiative was a big factor in this competition. But it was for me, and I'll explain that a bit later on again when we come into my period. But you've got two armies with initiative 3 trying to win the initiative, choose their ground. If Iñaki wins the ground, he's going to go mountain, close down the table. And if Paul wins the initiative, he's going to go plain, I would imagine, and completely try to open it up and use his extra pips and his maneuverability to get around. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that those heavy cavalry bow and the medium swordsman bow is going to make it very difficult for the Hittite light infantry screen to survive intact, and the Hittites could end up with quite a bit of damage before they actually get into combat. But you've got some evading, so yeah, a lot of it would be terrain, but then they're in trouble if they come across 8 medium swordsmen in a piece of rough terrain, like in their world of trouble. So yeah, kind of interesting. Okay, then, well, look, that's the biblical period done.
This means war.
So look, we're now into the steppe period, and in this period, every army that was allowed had to have steppe in its terrain. It didn't really matter what part of the book it was from, so there was quite an eclectic collection, but an awful lot of Hungarians in the end. But neither of these are Hungarian armies, so clearly we all picked the wrong thing there. And this is the one that came second, which is a Parthian army of Gordons, and let's just run through this one. 24, much more normal size. It's got one tiny command of 3 elite cataphracts and an ordinary included general, almost a mirror image of the heavy chariot command we just talked about. It's got one smaller command that looks like it's kind of skirmishing away on a flank. 4 horse archers, a medium cavalry bow, 1 light cavalry bow, 2 elite light cavalry bow to give you a 7. That's got a competent general with it, so that's whizzing around a lot. And then, as well as those 3 cataphracts, the meat of it is 2 cataphract camels, of course, 2 javelin men, 2 light infantry javelins, so you've got a bit of a rough terrain force there, 4 mediocre heavy spearmen, and 2 captured saluted pikemen, which are also mediocre. So you've got a 6 wide but a bit rubbish spear block to run around the steppes in, and 2 light infantry bow. So an interesting eclectic mix of 3 plus 2 cataphracts and a proper steppy sort of command. So Dave, you played in the steppe period. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, as you said, I mean, in the steppe period, I fully expected to be sitting there fighting, spending the whole weekend fighting Hungarians, and I only fought 1 Hungarian army in the 4 games that I played, which was a kind of surprise. I played this army in a practice game against Gordon beforehand and lost with the army that I was using, mainly I think because it's numbers. It's got, in this steppe period with the Hungarians, most armies were 20 to 21. I managed to get 22 with the dynastic Bedouin army, but 24 was a lot larger than other people. The other thing with the steppe competition was quite shooty heavy, whether it be infantry or cavalry in the shooting of there. And that block of 6 heavy foot was a real problem, because even if you are shooting them, you can't go and fight them. And you've just got to sit. If you decide to go in and shoot up the heavy infantry, it's going to take you forever, or it's going to take you 5 bounds, probably 4 to 5 bounds to actually kill them. You can't do that. So what I ended up doing was going and concentrating elsewhere and trying to, with my shooting in my army, which just didn't work. He's putting pressure on with the cataphracts and with the heavy infantry, especially with the heavy infantry moving 3 in that first move now. That makes a big difference. So your heavy infantry can speed across the table to support your punch cavalry, if that makes sense. That initial move of 3 makes a big difference. The heavy infantry, the spearmen even, the full heavy spear can combine up with the cataphracts. So you've got 5 cataphracts. That makes it a very, very difficult thing. And then his, as I would call it, his dick around command with the light horse is actually quite powerful, with 7 shooting cavalry, including 2 elite light horse and 4 medium cavalry. It's a really quite a good balanced army, actually, I would say. Again, I can't see the initiative. Is the initiative 3?
The initiative is 2 on this one.
2. Yeah, we'll come on to that theme later. But
Okay.
yeah, I think it's got, again, we've got this very mixed up commands again, though, haven't we? That, you know, that first command is quite mixed up with cataphract camels, medium foot, and heavy foot.
The second one's pretty straightforward, though.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's the punch. And
Yeah.
But again, I think this is there's a DBM theme, as I would call it, coming into this, with a micro command going down first in the obvious spot, which in this army is the 3 cataphracts with included general. And then he's essentially got 21 bases, which are going to get a good look at where the opposing army is going to be.
Okay. Richard, briefly, what's your thoughts on this one, looking at it?
I think it's interesting. I mean, just one comment really about the first command. You know, you might think, well, somebody will have a block of 6 heavy foot screened by the lights and so on. But one interesting thing you can do with it is because it's got a brilliant general, you can actually put the 2 cataphract camels in the middle and then have spear, pike, spear on either side. Now you've got an 8 wide. Yes, it takes you 3 pips to move, but early on you're moving 3 UD. You've got an 8 wide group that can kind of force almost anything back. And if it runs up against, say, the Hungarians, the 2 camels are going to give them quite a hard time in a way that having a big block of just 6 isn't. Because I think heavy knights are just going to charge that and trust that their armor is going to save them in the first round, and then they'll grind the mediocre spearmen and pikemen down.
Yeah, I wonder, looking at it, whether there's an element of there will be Hungarian war wagons and there will be Hungarian knights, and cataphract camels and pikemen, even though they're mediocre, is a pretty good counter to that.
Yes.
You know, and whether there's even a bit of dismounting potentially goes on if you're facing anything that's too Hungarian-y because the war wagons allow you to dismount, and suddenly your cataphracts turn into, what is it, elite heavily armored spearmen or something like that.
Yes.
Tim,
which would give a Hungarian.
I know you were bringing war wagons.
Yeah.
There was not a single war wagon in the competition.
Oh, right. Okay. It would have just been me then. It would have been my nemesis then.
I was hoping to see war wagons. I didn't see a single one.
Oh, right. It was obviously my flawed idea then. Okay. So that's an interesting one. I guess this doesn't necessarily need a proper bit of steppe, does it? It can operate with some bits of brush, because if everybody else is a cavalry army, those pikemen and spearmen can just march straight over a small bit of brush anyway. They're going to be as invulnerable in it as they are outside it in many ways. Cavalry is not going to come in after them at all.
With the rule saying you can add, if you choose steppe, you could add a +1. I think Gordon was every single time was going to choose steppe, add the +1, and hope that he could march his cataphract camels go through the brush.
Yeah.
Against a counter medium foot.
Yeah, true.
And then he doesn't really have to worry about medium foot.
I mean, its vulnerability perhaps is the third command, just with medium and light cavalry. If somebody is allowed some mixed foot, which are quite hard to attack, but their shooting can drive that off. But overall, it's a strong combination.
In our practice game, I flattened that third command with my medium foot commands, but that didn't, because I had bowmen. I mean, I would think some bowmen combined with the medium cavalry horse archers thing is a better combination.
All right, then. Well, look, let's have a quick look then at the other one in the steppe.
This means war.
So here we are with the next one in the steppe period, Abbasids, which was Marco. And I think Marco ended up being the top scorer of almost any player in all of the periods. And this is pretty much a textbook in a period where everybody seemed to have tried to outthink the steppe period. This is just a steppe period army, really. Abbasid Arab, 860, initiative of 3. First command up, you've got a brilliant general. You're using 2 of the Sudanese Abid, the half and half, spearman, bowman, medium spearmen. So sometimes they're vulnerable, sometimes they're not. You're using 4 Turkish Ghulams, half of them are elite. You're using a light foot javelin and a light cavalry javelin. So you've got a little shooting block, you've got a light foot to support it, and you've got 4 heavy cavalry and a light horse. Your second command is a biggie. It's got a brilliant commander again. 3 heavy spearmen, the support appears, which is great to see that. 3 Abid, medium spearmen and bowmen again. That's 6 infantry wide. 2 light foot javelin, pretty aggressive. A medium cavalry impact, a light cavalry impact elite, and a levy just to pad it out up to 11. And your final command is a very small one, but a little bit of punch. 2 heavy cavalry impact, the Al Khurasan, and then 2 light cavalry javelin and an ordinary general. So this one is about as steppy as you get in some ways for some of these Arab armies, but a lot of spearmen and support to poach you down. And looking at it, I'm sort of struggling to see where the cutting edge is. But I don't know, Richard, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think, as we've touched upon here, that the first command's got this combination of heavy cavalry bow and mixed foot. Having spear bow gives it some resilience against mounted. And if, for example, you could get it up against that third command that we were just looking at of lighter cavalry, so that's really designed for being on the steppes, being able to shoot up and push back any other kind of non-knight force. You've then got a solid infantry center, which is, it's got the shooting, so somebody can't ignore it. That's just going to slowly grind forward and force most people to retire or force them to charge it. But heavy spearmen support are going to be quite resilient. And then, as you say, you've got a small command that could completely redeploy if it wanted to, either from the center to a flank or vice versa. So it's not an army of shock and awe. It's an army with a lot of maneuverability, quite a lot of firepower, but enough punch that when the enemy's weakened, it can deliver the coup de grace. So I really like it. I think that's a very good list.
I must admit, I'm looking at it thinking this would be really interesting to put on table and play with, because you've got a lot of tools, but you'd have to use them. It's not Inyaki's list. It's not going to work itself. You've got to do.
No, you need to practice.
You need to practice with it, but also, it reminds you that in steppe, it is not just a billiard table. There's patches of uneven going and things like that. That if those medium spearmen bowmen get established in it, they're effectively invulnerable to anything on a horse, aren't they? If there's a bit of uneven terrain, and they can shoot out of it, supported by all the cavalry and all the other bits, and suddenly that becomes quite a sort of set of different fire bases that the heavy spearmen, the decent quality heavy cavalry, they can just push up past it, and then you hit someone with a couple of heavy cavalry impacts at the right time, and jobs are good, and really, isn't it? So
this means war.
So then, Dave, your take. Have a look at this list. I believe you've even played this one as well.
I did indeed, and lost to it.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think this was kind of almost a top table battle. I know Richard played Paul Dawson, and we spoke about that list earlier, and Drew. I think Simon might have lost to the other list we're going to talk about in a minute, but I played this list. Our armies were fairly even. I think the big thing at the beginning was I didn't win the initiative. We both chose to fight in the steppes, which gave us the +1, and I lost the initiative, which allowed Marco to have a very good look at where my army was. I then was forced into trying to do a bit of repositioning, which
because he's got that tiny little command of 2 heavy cavalry impact and 2 light horse javelin, and I'm guessing that goes down first.
That went down first on one flank. I faced up to it with one of my smaller, I had a command of say 6, which faced up to it. But he ended up with his cavalry facing off on my cavalry. He was slightly more powerful because his heavy cavalry are the heavy cavalry rather than medium cavalry in my case. I was in a situation where I was trying to remaneuver some medium cavalry impact round the back of my medium infantry. It just didn't work. I mean, I think the advantage he had in this army, so he puts down his heavy cavalry army on one flank, his other heavy cavalry shooting command next to it, and then his spear command. It's a sort of standard tactic. It's used by the French a lot when they play the Crusader list. That heavy infantry command is very difficult to get around the flank. I was facing it with shooty cavalry. It was no point in going up and trying to shoot a heavy infantry with all the losses they can sustain.
No, you're not going to shoot the heavy spear, and the Abbid are going to give you a bit of a pounding, aren't they, as well?
Yeah. And his having a brilliant commander with that command. I mean, he had a last-ditch defense with the medium cavalry and the light horse impact where he could just throw them into my troops going around the flank, and that worked very well for him. He played that quite well. In fact, he played it very well. What he did.
So does the army sort of pivot then? Does it play on half the table and pivot on that heavy? That infantry command almost sits on the baseline and swings around, and the rest kind of swings around wider.
Yeah, I mean, we were fairly sort of evenly matched on the flank, where I had 2 light horse impact, 2 medium cavalry impact facing his heavy cavalry impact and his light horse javelin. His light horse javelin managed to get some shots in first, which was effective. Then it became the pivot point in that. I mean, he has his 2 Abbid, the medium spear bow, in between the heavy cavalry and his heavy cavalry bow. Okay. So he was using the medium foot spear bow to shoot in his lancers. So I countered with my 2 medium spear bow, and then in fact we ended up having a shooting match, and then we ended up fighting each other there, and that was really decisive because he beat those 2 of mine. I got into. Do
you find the medium spear bow are, with the new medium spear rules, do you think they're a bit more resilient, a bit more of a something to frighten away cavalry more than they used to be?
Damn right. I think they're really useful. I mean, I always treat them as bowmen with a little bit more strength, but in a position where they're supporting cavalry bow or cavalry impacts, just getting one shot on your opponent to knock them down one level and having something to threaten to come in as an overlap, because the medium spear, bow are moving quite quickly. They can support. So it's something we've all got used to. Is you have a heavy cavalry command and I always have a cavalry command with some bowmen if I can to support them, and that threatening the flanks. That worked very well for him. We had a heavy cavalry bow face off in the middle of the table, which was just a bit stuck on each other. We ended up fighting it out in the end because I was getting desperate. But I think having that large command of the spear. I mean, he had the spear on the outside, and then the 2 medium spear bows in the 3 actually. Yeah. He had those in the centre with the spearman on the outside, so he could put in and things like that. It's a very good, well balanced list. I really like it.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting bit about, the light horse are all javelin, all their impact elite. There's no light horse bow there. These guys are, well, I suppose they're shooting at close range with javelin, but they're primarily about trying to put pressure on you and fight, and that you're using the infantry as the bowman. Yeah.
And he's got more command. He's got more, he had all the way through the game, he had more pips, won the initiative. That was a real clincher, I think.
Actually, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, because there's 2, 3, 4. There's not. No, there's only 5 light horse in that. He didn't quite bump it up to the 6 that would be needed to give you an even bigger initiative point. But that's not far off with the light foot javelin counting as 1, is it? 3 light foot counts as an extra point. All right, then. So an interesting and very textbook step type list, but still with with an infantry corps with 3 heavy spear and 5 mixed medium foot, who are a lot more effective now that medium spear have been upgraded under version 4. So that's the Steppe period. Let's have a look at the 25mm period.
This means war.
So here we are into the big boys' toys, the 25mm period, which was pre-0. It was a sub-0 period, so every army had to be dated before 0 AD. And the second place one was our own Dave Allen, with kind of an unusual choice, I would have thought, for, given the choice of everything pre-0, of having the Achaemenid Persians. And in fact, these are the later Achaemenid Persians, so doesn't quite have the enormous towers, which would be quite something to see, I guess, in 25mm, if anybody could ever conjure them up. But this one, of course, it's a big army because the Persians tend to do that. And this one might take us a bit of a while to read through, because I think there's almost something different on every line. So you've got 2 brilliant commanders and an ordinary, same as that Steppe army we just looked at. The tiny corps with the ordinary included unreliable is a bow heavy cavalry, there's other horsemen, a light infantry bow, and a light infantry javelin. So it's basically 1 cavalryman included general and a couple of light foot to lurk in some terrain or do something. Then your first command, in fact, there's a side chariot in each of the 2 big commands. I guess they act as a reserve, possibly. You've got 1 normal horseman, 2 Indian crappy cavalry, 1 guard cavalry, heavy cavalry impacted elite, 2 light cavalry javelin. So you've got a very mixed, 2 rubbish, 1 really good but aggressive, and 1 normal shooty bow cavalry, and a couple of light cavalry javelin to give you sort of 6 wide there, but the mediums are a bit iffy. You've got the elephant, which is a very unusual addition to this Persian army. 2 medium sword that I guess creates you a cheap Death Star, but an anti-cavalry Death Star. A light infantry sling to sit in front of the elephant, a light infantry javelin to sit in front of the elephant, and a Mardian archer, mediocre bow to again widen it out and work with them. Then the second corps, side chariot, 1 heavy cavalry bow, 1 medium cavalry bow, 3 mediocre medium cavalry. So that's 5 mediocre cavalry in this army. So this is all going for width, I guess. 2 light cavalry bow. Then I dare say the meat, or daren't say the meat really, 2 heavy spearmen hoplites, 1 of the half sword, half bow elite guard infantry, the former whatever they're called, Spara type guys, and 1 javelin man and a light infantry sling. So that's a big old set of bags of nonsense, really, isn't it? Richard, do you make head nor tail of that, other than the fact it's probably quite wide and it's more units than you can count?
I don't know. Do we know how it did in the tournament?
Well, the team came.
The team did well.
The team came second, so it must have done reasonably well, because I don't think the format allows you to carry someone unsuccessful. But I think, is this kind of a Julian-esque army of just having enough decent stuff to pin you, and then loads more crappy stuff to mob you, possibly? Yeah,
I mean, that's the only sort of tactic I can see with it. It's the challenge. I don't know. It's so unlike a list I would typically take. I would think against somebody with a reasonable size, 24, 25 kind of element army of Romans or Successors or something that can really get at the stuff that can't get away easily.
Yeah. This is 27 plus 2 side chariots, so it's starting to get wide, isn't it? And
it is, but the danger can be that you've still got to be able to get that width in place, and if your opponent gets a waterway down, so that you can't take full advantage of that width, And so, if it's the sort of list that appeals to you, you've got the width, you've got the style. Personally, if I'm going to play that sort of army, I'd probably prefer to have more impetuous medium swordsmen as cheap and lots rather than mediocre cavalry. But it comes down to your playing style.
Yeah, because I guess if you look at both those commands, the big commands of 12 each, you've got five combat troops plus the size chariot in each of them. So you've got a frontage of 12 there that can sort of fight something, and you've got the extra heavy cavalry, you've got the other heavy cavalry bow and the other thing. So you've got 13 or so, plus everybody takes some light horse. So you could argue 14, 15, 16, 17 with light horse is a normal army width. And then all of a sudden you've got 5 or 6 extra medium cavalry who can cause damage if they get into the flank.
Yes, they can.
But they've got to get around the flank and get into it, which is a little bit terrain dependent. Dave, have you seen this on table? Does this make any sense to you at all?
I peered round at one point and looked at it and thought, what the hell? It's a million miles away from the way I play. I suspect it's becoming a sort of new fashion. I mean, the thing that's
it depends how well it did. We'll have to look up how well it did and see if I can find that out.
The thing that stands out for me is that micro command is even getting smaller. 2 light foot and a heavy cavalry.
Yeah,
it's just. I mean, it's just bonkers. I mean, I would, if I'm going to have a micro command, I'd give it some welly with something which can hit hard if it's going to include a general of some sort. But then I suppose Dave's saying he's going to put down 3 bases and get to see the whole of the enemy's army. His initiative is 3, which is quite powerful. That makes a big difference. He's going to get to look at everything. He's so dependent on his brilliant commanders. I mean, he's got 2 brilliant commanders. They are going to have to throw very good pips to move those 2 huge commands of nonsense around. And I think that's going to be its limitation. I'm just looking at that. There's 5 mediocre medium cavalry.
Yeah, no, I think that's the magic width, isn't it? If you look at that, and I suppose now that you've got the new, slightly more deadly flank attack, that is a possibility, isn't it? So let's just have a look. So this one scored 2 wins and then 3 null results for a total of 324, which was not a great score. Well, it's a reasonable score, I suppose. 324 would put you.
So I think it makes an interesting army in a team because it's quite a hard army to beat. As Dave shows by not losing because of its size.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of stuff that can run away if it's under pressure.
Yeah.
But it maybe doesn't have quite enough punch in the right places to win often. You're kind of relying on your opponent to let you get those flanks.
True.
And sometimes you can force it. But again, if the terrain is quite heavy, there's not that much medium foot in it. Yeah. And so I can imagine a lot of draws, which is what they've had.
Yeah. No, I suppose it's an interesting thing about you can take different armies and try and play in different ways, can't you?
You can.
And this is pretty bloody different, whichever way you go.
This means war.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the final 25 mil army, which was a Ptolemaic army used by John Edwards in the Yorkshire team. So this pretty, from the ridiculous to the default almost, I suspect, the Ptolemaic. So you've got ordinary, brilliant, pretty straightforward mix. The ordinary's driving 2 elephants, 3 medium swordsmen impetuous, so it's a mega Death Star, a couple of lightfoot javelin to screen the elephants, and a Thracian javelinman to protect the flanks of that 5 wide mega Death Star. God, it feels like ages since we talked about Death Star, doesn't it? It's great to see like a proper old school one in there. Then you've got a brilliant general with a medium cavalry. I think that might be compulsory. You've got a Zeiss to 4i, heavy cavalry impact, a light cavalry javelin. So that's your little cavalry group. 4 pikemen, a hoplite to widen it out, another Thracian javelin to fill in the gaps, and a light infantry sling. And then the brilliant general's got 3 mediocre pike, another hoplite, another slinger, and then another medium cavalry and a light cavalry javelin. So you've got a little outrider force there. But this is all about putting a 5 wide Death Star and 7 pikemen and 2 hoplites. That's 9, 16, well, 15, 16, really quite pokey stuff right down your throat, I guess, quite quickly in a kind of textbook old school sort of way.
Yeah, I think the elephants should be mediocre.
Okay, possibly they are. Yeah, I've not transcribed that to the what's it? So, sorry, to the wiki where we're looking at this on screen at the moment. So, Richard, I think, far away. You know, it looks. I think it's like a very nice.
I think it's a very nice army because you've got a strong medium terrain command. As I say, I think the elephant should be mediocre, but still a lot of the time that doesn't matter. That enables the medium swordsman to come out into the open in a way against cavalry in a way they might not normally be able to. So they don't just have to hug the terrain, they can cross the terrain and get into the opponent. And 7 pikemen is always a handful. Even if some of them are mediocre, medium spear are that bit better than they used to be. They certainly pad out the line perfectly capably against most people except sort of impetuous swordsmen. And then you've got enough mounted and light infantry to, if someone is trying to slow you down, you can punish them. So yeah, I think it's a nice balanced army. I'm interested that he took so many javelin men rather than taking the Thracians as 2-handed weapons, but that's obviously how John chose to play the army. They are.
Yeah. Okay. Dave, what's does what it says on the tin? Have you
It's much more my style of playing. It's got a lot of punch there. It's got 7 pike plus heavy cavalry, medium cavalry, hoplites. I mean, it's got a very, very wide punching front. I guess the elephants go through terrain, as Richard says, or go through the center of the game, and you give them a chance to do some damage and then follow up with other things. I think that's maybe where the javelin men are useful, to protect those impetuous swordsmen, give it a bit of width, maybe take advantage of things there. My suspicion.
I suppose if you don't have them, you don't have much shooting, do you? They give you just a little bit extra to drive away enemy light foot that maybe the 2-handed cutters. You don't need the 2-handed cutters because you've got impact foot, elephants and pike, which are going to take down spearmen or anything like that anyway.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think I love the javelin men because their maneuverability and their ability to evade, they can, in essence, hold off something getting into your flank by at least 1 bound, if not 2 bounds, because they can come up, protect a flank from somebody going into a flank, and then they force the opponent to charge them, and hopefully you can prevent them going into a flank. So I guess that javelin, the Thracian javelin in Command 1 is there to protect the Nubian impetuous swordsman.
I guess they can evade, can't they? If they were the turning cutting weapon men, they're actually combat troops, but the army is actually, I think it's 26, something like that. So because it's got a reasonable number of these light horse and light cavalry and medium cavalry dotted about and light infantry, you're actually saying deal with our 7 pikemen, our 5 wide Death Star, our Zeiss to 4i, our 2 medium spearmen. You're saying deal with all of that, and as long as the rest of it doesn't get caught or chewed up, you've kind of got to break a lot of combat troops to break that army, which makes it slightly different. So and again, this one ended up with victory, defeat, victory, and 2 draws. So whereas it was the Marco and the Abbasids that we've just seen with a straight run of 5 wins that really propelled that team forwards, and Paul's Assyrians ended up with 4 wins and a draw as well. But this is a good solid list to throw at someone, isn't it? And then it wins or it loses, and that's what you want. You roll some dice and you get some combat results.
Could be limited by what's available to the player in 25 minutes.
That as well. I think that's another challenge for people. But and again, I think it's good to remember that Death Stars still exist and still work, particularly the good old-fashioned 5-wide one.
Yeah,
definitely. Good. All right. Well, look, I think that's gently eased us back into this format of podcast, if nothing else. Hopefully it's eased some of our listeners back into it as well. We'll have another look and see if there's any other themes and things which spring to mind that we can focus on for some Army List podcasts soon. We're making tentative steps to bring back the main podcast, and bizarrely I've been invited onto someone else's podcast when I can actually get around to doing it as well. So there is more Madaxeman sort of audio content of varying qualities on varying places heading its way to you. So on that note, we will say goodbye. Thanks for indulging us as we try and get back into the swing of it. So from myself, from David and Richard, goodbye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.